Hi, everyone. My name is Jeanette, and I am the marketing manager for our Texas markets, which includes our Houston and Austin campuses. First off, I would like to give you all a warm Flatiron welcome to today's Landing a Job During a Pandemic panel. Thank you for tuning in from wherever you are. Feel free to try out the chat box feature by telling us where you're from. Additionally, thank you to my marketing counterpart, Michelle and Jelani, for helping bring this event to life, our amazing moderator and career coach, Rick, for leading the panel today, and to our amazing alumni, Matt, Lillian, Hui, and Miwa. We will get to their intro shortly, and then we will also be, and one of them have an exciting announcement to share as well. And for those of you who are new to Flatiron School, they offer on-campus and online immersive courses in software engineering, data science, and cybersecurity. We also have a proven track record of impressive job placement and career coaching. Since its founding in 2012, Flatiron School has graduated thousands of students. If you would like to learn more about us, feel free to check out our website at flatironschool.com. If you have any questions during the workshop, feel free to put them into the chat box, and we will get to them during our Q&A portion. And with that, I'll hand it over to Rick.
Well, thank you, Jeanette. I appreciate that. Hi, everybody. My name is Rick Davis. I'm one of the full-time career coaches at Flatiron School before I became a coach, and I'm a certified coach. I spent most of my career in senior positions in the music business and as a filmmaker. I'm really glad that we're all gathered here today. I'd like to introduce the folks on our panel. So why don't we start with Miwa, and each of you can let the folks know about who you are and a little bit about your journey to your job.
Sure, yeah. Well, thanks everyone for being here. My name is Miwa. So before I joined Flatirons, I joined in January and I graduated this April. But before that, I had like a long career in the culinary world and in the pastry world. I was like a pastry chef and food stylist, and I worked in like kitchens and doing all of that for like about 7 years. And I was kind of just like ready for some sort of like a career change. And so I found programming, and then I did a lot of research down Flatirons. I had a really great experience. I loved it. And then, like I said, I graduated in April. I've been job searching for about 2 months, and actually just got a position on Friday with Overtone Hair Care. So I'm going to be a junior front-end developer, but it was a long process, a lot of stuff that we'll probably cover. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Well, thanks, Miwa. William, you want to pick up the ball, please?
Yeah, sure. My name is William Lee Bowie, and I'm a research data scientist at the way upstream. Before becoming a data scientist, I was in the PhD program for mathematics. So after 2 years in the program, I decided to quit and pursue data science. And so I graduated with a master's degree in mathematics at A&M in August 2019. And I attended a Flatiron Bootcamp in September 2019, and I finished in December. And it took me 4 months to find a job. Yeah.
Terrific. Thank you, William. Now, Lillian, you want to fill the folks in on your journey?
Sure. Yeah. So hi, I'm Lillian. I was actually in the same cohort as Miwa in Denver. And well, I currently work as a software engineer at Taligent Financial in Boulder. But where I started the journey, I guess it all sort of started with me wanting a career change. I have a background in a lot of biomedical research, and I went to college in Connecticut at Yale, and I majored in molecular biology, and I always had the intention of medical school, and continued that research in New York City, where I did cancer research. And then I came back to Colorado and really just wanted a change. I realized that wasn't the right path for me, and really fell into Flatiron School, being in Denver and whatnot, and was really excited about it. And so yeah, it's been a good journey, and I just graduated in April and started my job about 5 weeks ago. So very fresh. Yeah.
Fantastic. Matt, you're up next.
Definitely. Hi. Yeah, my name is Matt. Thanks for attending, everyone. I'm currently a data scientist and machine learning engineer at a pharmaceutical company called Traps 2.0. I had attended from October to the very end of January, and then ended up grabbing this job at the top of May. Prior to doing data scientist, I had a very different background. Actually, I actually have a degree in composition and jazz performance, and was working in the music industry for better part of like 5 or 6 years leading up to this. And I was doing a lot of like marketing, a lot of talent buying, venue management, which was all like great and fun and everything. But I just like found myself just something was missing. I wasn't quite sure what it was. And I happened to have some friends who were some software engineers, and one of them had a brother who had gone to Flatiron School. And we just got into this conversation one night, and I started looking into it and realized that there's a lot of potential to do a lot more with the type of things that I was interested in. And it happened, and as I looked at the program, I saw the data science program like offered a lot. And yeah, after I did that, kind of changed my life, fell in love with machine learning, and then yeah, graduated, and now I'm here.
Well, terrific. Well, thank you all, the four of you. To get started on the next part of the discussion, I think we'd like to just ask each of you to talk generally about some advice you would give to anyone who's looking to break into tech. You've all actually had interesting and different pathways through the Flatiron School and your new careers. So who'd like to jump in first on that?
I can say something about that.
Okay, thank you, Matt.
I think like my opinion on breaking into tech is like initially when I was looking at it, I was a little intimidated. I thought, oh, I don't have the strongest math background. I don't know necessarily a lot about computers. So part of me kind of thought it was this other thing that I needed to learn. And while there's definitely nuances to the field, I think what I garnered the most from is realizing that tech can be applied to anything. It's just a tool. So if you can kind of understand what you're interested in, and you can figure out a way to apply tech to what you're interested in, you can use that as a gateway to understanding what, like, and how to situate yourself in that environment, in that field. So for me, like when I was in the program, almost all of my projects were about music, and everything that I needed to do, I had to ask myself the question of like, oh, how does this apply to music? Or what can I do with music, whether that be industry, like actual audio or whatever. And it wasn't until I kind of went through that process, I then was able to learn the vocabulary and expand in the field. But for me, I think realizing it's a tool and applying it to what you know can open those doors and allow you to see a lot of other opportunities you might not have known existed.
Well, that's terrific. Thank you, Matt. Would one of the software engineers like to jump in?
Yeah, sure. I think one of the most, we can all say that one of the best ways is to attend a Flatiron Bootcamp to break into tech. It's a great introduction to everything. And I think my entire life, I always thought I was really bad at technology. I was cursed. I couldn't ever be part of that sphere of anything. And I think, Flatiron specifically really breaks it down for you in terms of, like Matt said, that this can really be used as a tool for any industry. And it's really a very creative field. And I think when you want to sort of take that chance on yourself, and you need to have that confidence that you can learn and get excited to learn a large amount of things, but also be prepared for just like a paradigm shift in how you think about things, how you approach things. It's not just learning languages and technology. It's a lot about changing how you think and approach problems and what you want to do. So yeah.
Well, great. Well, thank you. William, do you have anything to add that you'd like on this subject?
Yeah, sure.
I'll add something. Oh,
I'm sorry. You can go first. Yeah.
okay. What worked for me personally, like before I even got into doing Flatirons or anything like that, I had been like attending meetups and doing like workshops on the weekend, like for a year before. I was working like at a really cool company with some amazing people, and there was a dev team, and I let them know like I'm really interested in this, or I'm at least curious, and they would do lunch and learn, so I would go to like all of them, and so like any opportunity I had to learn more about it, I would go to it. But like going to meetups were really great because I got to I got to meet people who are like actually in the industry and hear about their experience, and it kind of like solidified the interest for me. And so going to Flatirons was like a no-brainer. But just like knowing if you like tech or not, because like you could be a data scientist or you could be a front-end engineer, like there's so many different paths. So I think talking to the people who are working in those roles is really good, because it might help you navigate like what direction to go in.
Thanks, Miwa. William?
Yes. So for me, I have so in my personal experience, I'm a math guy. So therefore, I mean, I've been in academia for so long, for my entire life. And when I quit my PhD and enter, a bootcamp, I still have that habit, study everything from the bottom up. And if I don't understand anything and I am forced to use it, I would feel like, I'm not good enough. Like I always have that imposter syndrome. But I guess, in the tech industry, you just need to learn really fast. And my advice for you guys is just learn everything from the top down, trying to understand the general idea, how to apply, that, let's say, machine learning algorithm, and understand the detail later. And I think the most important thing is to have a passion, because in this field, if you don't have a passion to learn, then you would be outdated really early. Yeah, that's my advice.
Oh, great. Well, thank you for that. You all raised some very interesting points. So something you said, William, I think is particularly something that a lot of people focus on or think about. You mentioned the imposter syndrome. So you've all succeeded at the program. You did your studying, you did your work, you did your presentations, and you finished all of the requirements. So you've talked about what it's like to start to think about getting into tech, but once you graduate or you're going through the process of preparing to look for a position, how are you feeling about the idea of searching in a new field when you were a fresh graduate? Lillian, I
Yes.
saw you bobbing your head. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, I'll go ahead. Yeah, I was very intimidated. I'm not gonna lie. I think, the goal of attending a boot camp is, the goal, graduating and getting that certificate is a really exciting day, but really getting a job is the end goal. And so I think on the day of graduation, I mentally in the back of my mind, I wasn't really letting myself celebrate, because I knew that the work was really just about to begin. And it's a very steep uphill battle, and especially, interviewing for your first job in a new field is very challenging, and navigating that interviewing process and having a lot of ups and downs and a roller coaster of, good feedback and rejection. I was feeling pretty intimidated, but I think it helped me to get started right away after graduating, because and even I started really during the boot camp, but I think riding that momentum that I had was really helpful for me to tackle, the mountain of things that I needed to do to get a job, instead of maybe taking time off and whatnot. So I think riding that momentum really helped me.
You all were searching for your positions during the COVID pandemic. So it was even more challenging, I would think. William, you would start to speak before. Would you like to add to that?
Yes. So because I'm a data scientist, so I will just show you some number. So within 3 weeks and 3 months and 2 weeks, I have applied for I have submitted about 230 applications, and I got 10 interviews and 1 job offer. So it's really tough. I spent full time searching for job, networking, doing code challenge, maybe 40 or 50 hours a week. And at the beginning, I was really excited because this is like my first full-time job, you know. But then by the end, I just feel like very frustrated every day because every morning I just like wake up, go through my email and count how many rejection I have. But I mean, I guess to get used to that eventually. And finally, I got a job.
Well, you were successful in the end. That's what really counts, and you worked hard at it, obviously. Um, so, does anybody else have anything they want to talk about with regard to how you were feeling at the beginning of the search?
Yeah, I can add something to that. I kind of want to piggyback off of the idea of getting rejected a lot. And initially, for me, that it was a little hard at first to receive that type of feedback because you don't really know what to expect, and you maybe are dealing with that imposter syndrome a lot. But overall, it's actually a really informative process to be rejected. I think it's actually something you should look forward to a little bit because the job I have now is so perfect for who I am and what I want that if I would have gotten that first job, looking back on it, having a little more insight as to what these type of jobs can be, I don't know if I would have been right for that job. So it's like kind of good. The rejection process isn't necessarily saying you're not good enough for something. It's just that you might not be the right fit for that group. And it's like each job, like a relationship that you have with a community of people or however big your team is. And so it's kind of actually a narrowing process, and it's like leading you to what you actually are good at if you pay attention to it in the right way and don't beat yourself up over it. So I kind of just want to add that in, that like rejection can be an informative process that can lead you into a better direction rather than something you can use to like, be hard on yourself about.
Thank you. Anybody want to add to anything to that, to this issue? Well, let me then ask this question. Matt, you bring up a very interesting point, which is when you're interviewing, interviewing goes in both directions.
Mm-hmm.
You're checking out the people on the other end, they're checking you out, and you have to find a good fit. Did you have any of you have a particular game plan about how you went about deciding how I'm going to look for positions that are open, where I'm going to look, not necessarily only physically in terms of location, but within industry sectors or other ways of saying, this is how I'm going to plan my search?
Yeah, I kind of, so you want to go?
Go ahead. Nope.
For me, I thought of it as I saw it as a kind of I kind of drew it like a map. I'm a very visual person when I come to planning, so I kind of saw it as like it's a layer of circles, and I start in the center circle, which is the closest people that I know, and I just started talking to people that I knew. I happen to know a few people in the tech industry, but even if you don't, like LinkedIn, Medium, Twitter, they're all really great resources to find people who are doing similar things. I just started like talking to people to get a feel of what is out there. And what I found actually was most useful for me was, I will say I did initially do that thing where I was just throwing resumes at the wall essentially. And that ended up being like a waste of time for me personally. And I found that I actually started to pick up momentum in stride when I was actually just reaching out to people as like a one-on-one. Like one of the things I do a lot is I do a lot of the Medium posts. I also blog a lot on it. And I will find people who have similar topics as me. It might be something simple as like, what type of loss function is going to work for it's like machine learning algorithm. It's like some simple blog, but you find something about that you connect with the way that person writes, or you find something that you feel some type of similarity, and just speak to them personally, shoot them an email, let them know that you're interested, and try to build a one-on-one. And I mean, that's kind of how it worked for me personally, was just reaching out to people one-on-one, and then slowly, you develop this network and you start to get this kind of stream of information as to like where jobs are. I know there's probably a lot of other methods out there, but for me personally, it was a one-on-one connection that built out to kind of a bigger picture.
Right. Well, you're raising a very interesting and important point, which is networking. And it's something that is stressed when you are going through the process of preparing for your job search. But as you began, any of the other folks, when you began your job search, because it sounded not like you had an idea and then you refined it as you started going. So what was, if you had a plan at the beginning, anybody else who wants to speak up, what was your plan and then we can talk about how you refine that plan through the process of the career prep track and the other tools that the school offers to help you through the process.
Yeah.
You want? No, go
Yeah.
right ahead.
Sorry.
Either way.
Go ahead, Miwa.
Okay. I think for me, so just like my first off of that plan was just like apply to everything, and go to like every single meetup, like network like crazy. And I got like so burnt out, so quickly, just because you're like literally, you're like giving so much. Like I'm meeting with this person and talking for 30 minutes, and then I'm going to this meetup. And I think, yeah, and that kind of like burnt me out really quickly. I had to kind of like refine my process after a little bit, and the things that were really important to me with a company was like their company culture and like their values. I know like a lot of companies like say they have values, or maybe they don't have like any at all on their webpage, but like those things to me matter a lot because I've worked in companies that were like really great because they had really strong values, and they had great employees, and the whole experience. Obviously, nothing is perfect, but it was like, this is a place I want to be for years. And then I've worked in the opposite environment, and that was like really terrible for me personally. So that's like what I wanted from a job. And so I started to refine my process a little bit more about like the companies. I'd look on Glassdoor, or I'd go to like Built in Colorado and show like the top companies in Colorado, or people who are nominated for, just like greatest place to work, or I don't know, something like that. But I just started to like trying to find the places that I knew had really great leadership and great employees. And then I started trying to connect with those people, whether they had a position open or not. And that started working like a little bit better, just being more intentional about like who I connected with, because like your time is valuable and you only have like so much energy that you can give. So I started to like refine my process more, and I found that to be just a little better, because I also like I resonate with the fact, or what Matt was saying about like you might find a company that you don't necessarily vibe with really well, but like I had a situation like that where I was really close and pretty far in a process with another company, but like everything in my gut was saying it wasn't a good fit. But I just like was so desperate to get a job, and it took a lot for me to say no. And it was because I knew that I would be saying yes because out of fear, and not because I was excited at all. And that's not like how I wanted to start my journey. And so I said no. And then, the week later, I started interviewing with Overtone, and now I feel like it's like the perfect fit. And so I think it's just like interesting, like being in tune with what you need, and also, yeah, like you're interviewing another company as well. So yeah, that's my bit.
Lee, did you want to answer that?
Me, yeah. Yeah, I think I originally had started, I cast a very wide net. I think part of the reason why I switched careers was because I didn't know what I wanted to do. And so I didn't want to narrow myself to any industry. And, I didn't know what I didn't know. I wanted to expose myself to a lot of things. And so I was very open to everything. And originally I just thought that I'm just going to apply, to 5 jobs every single day, through the job postings. That was basically my strategy. I was like, I'm just going to play this numbers game. It has to work out in the end, just by doing that. I was like narrowing my focus to that. And I think that, I got positive feedback that way. But I definitely realized that I needed to shift because I wanted to, I wasn't getting as much feedback as I would have liked. And so I think, my career coach suggested that I really, start networking, not maybe the classic way that people think of networking, but more making connections by like sending cold emails, following up on applications with those cold emails and cold LinkedIn messages, and just kind of taking a chance on any of that because you don't really have anything to lose. And it could really work out for you if you send that message on LinkedIn to, a senior dev somewhere that you're interested in, or send that message on Slack. And so I think I refined it to, following up on all my applications and messaging people if they want to get coffee, messaging people Like Matt said, they wrote a blog post that I was really interested in, and continuing to make connections that way. And I got a lot of really positive feedback, not from the applications themselves, but from sort of promoting my applications that way, by reaching out to people like that. And additionally, I think I also realized that I needed to apply to not just junior developer positions. I needed to apply to senior and mid-level positions with technology that I had never even heard of, because what you learn at a boot camp is that you can learn anything, and you can really like take on that challenge and have faith in yourself. And I think that led to several, it led to a job, but it led to a lot of interviews as well, because I would get the feedback that they're not hiring senior devs, or they're not, I'm not a senior dev, so they're not, but they're going to be hiring a junior dev, and they're not going to be posting that job, and so they'll refer me to that position, and that's just another avenue to get in that way. And so I think just having that confidence and being bold was how I essentially refined my search from the numbers game to the networking in that way.
Well, you guys all have raised some very interesting points. Finding the values, trying to evaluate the values of the companies that you are interested in, and looking with the materials that are available to see what their self-image is, to help you refine your search is what I'm hearing. Networking is enormously important. It can be intimidating, but it's worth the effort, and there's going to be rejection. It's part of the process. So you have to be brave about that, and you have to know that very often you can't take it personally when you don't hear back from someone you don't know, because they don't know you either. Which leads to so you're now all, as I understand it, trying to figure out what to apply to and how to reach out to people that can help you make connections. Hopefully, unfortunately, eventually you all got screeners or first round interviews. Is there anything you'd like to share about what that experience is like, both either from a positive and or negative standpoint, and how you evolve your own techniques and ways of dealing with the interview process?
I'll share something. So before I ever had like my first like cultural interview, I had like a mock cultural interview with my career coach. And that was like really helpful. I didn't really think that I needed it, because like, oh, I can talk to people and I can network, like I got it. Like typically like that hasn't been an issue for me, but this is the first time that I was breaking into like a brand new career. And so she like was pressing me really hard on like, how do your past like experiences really relate to what the company needs now in like a real way? Because like, for example, I would say like, oh, I was like a cake decorator, and cake decorating is really similar to programming. But she was like, how though? Like, I'm not a cake decorator. Like, they might not be a cake decorator. They might have like absolutely no idea how those skills are transferable. So you need to like literally be explicit about like why. And so it's like, okay, you take a cake project and you break it down into like multiple pieces, and there's a lot of like different things, like components of a recipe that go into like the final creation of a cake. So being more specific about like exactly how they match, because they're not going to pick that up, like, or they might not even know, and you might not even notice it when you're speaking, that they didn't really understand like how those things relate. And so that was really helpful for me personally, like having that cultural mock interview, because it let me practice a lot of my answers and then break them down. And so none of my answers were kind of like throwaway answers. They were all things that I had thought about a lot, and even like written them out and really refined like my answers. And I feel like that helped a lot in my interview processes as well.
Let me follow up on that. Did you get the opportunity in interviews to actually talk about how that experience as a cake decorator connected to your move into software engineering, and why that was valuable to you, and how did you bring that up?
Yeah, it definitely like came up. And actually one thing that came up a lot was that I would speak to a lot was my time working in the kitchen, because I used to like work on a kitchen line, and it's not like a glamorous job at all, but it's like an extremely high pressure, high intensity environment where like there's so much going on and things are really fast paced. And if there were problems, like something goes wrong, you don't really have the time to just like throw your hands in the air and freak out about it. It's kind of like, okay, how do we assess this problem that we have right now, and then what are the steps to fix it and like move forward? Like that's kind of just how we work in kitchens, and that was something that was like directly transferable into like any workplace, because they want to know like how you deal with pressure and how do you deal with things that are fast paced. If there's like a deadline and everyone needs to be all hands on deck, like how are you gonna like rally? And so there are definitely things with cake decorating that I would bring up, but like that I would bring up a lot because I felt like that was like things that like companies really resonated with what they wanted with employees.
Right. Well, you know, you raised some very interesting points, because you mentioned it was a cultural interview, because each of you
Yeah.
has gone through technical interviews, but at the beginning, when people are trying to get to know you, they want to know not only why you're making this move and what your experience was at Flatiron, but who you are as a person and whether you'd make a good colleague. So
Yeah.
is there anybody else who'd like to talk about some specific experiences in the interview process that you found that were really good learning experiences?
Yes, I have something to.
Go ahead.
So yeah, so for me, because I'm a data scientist, I guess the type of interview that I have is kind of unique compared to a software developer. So I have interviewed with two company. One of them is American Airlines, and the type of interview that I had is they just told me a data set and tell me to answer this question, these 10 questions, and get back to them in 48 hours. And so I spent 48 hours straight, no sleep, working on the data, try to make a perfect solution. And then when I submitted, after that a few days, they say that they find someone better than me. So I mean, it's really frustrated because you working really hard, and all they said is they find someone better than you. I mean, so at first I was really upset, and it took me like a few days to recover. But then I realized that I mean, the company, they also like they have to find like a best person, right? Because like they spend a lot of money on that person, so they have a right to find the best candidate. And so I just get over that really quickly. And the other type of interview that I have is I have to explain my my final project at Flatiron to the CEO or the C level people. And so as a data scientist, it requires you to be able to explain something very technical in a simple words, because that's what you're gonna do. That's how you present your work, right? It doesn't matter what type of machine learning algorithm that you use. The most important thing is what you show to your manager, to your CEO, to your customer. Yeah, and so that's two type of interview that I think is very unique for data scientists.
Well, you touched on something very interesting, which is that each of you had, I expect, some cultural discussion, and as well technical discussions. We have to present projects to somebody who is not a layperson but actually knows the details. You brought up something interesting, which I'd like to get into a little bit, which is the Flatiron has a career services program that involves coaching and the employee partnership team. Can each of you talk a little bit about what the process was and how that career services program was helpful to you, if it was, and if it wasn't, in what ways could it have been?
Yeah, I can start with something with that. One of the things I actually really loved about the career services program was that, especially since pretty much what had happened when after I graduated, is there was like basically like, I don't know, like 3 weeks of, oh, you can go to meetups, you can go to hackathons, and then like the pandemic started, and then it was like, okay, you can't leave your apartment. And what was really great for me was it was, and I mean, I happened to live alone in this apartment, so I was kind of to my own devices, and it was really great to have this like level of accountability, someone to talk to, kind of have you like check with every week, someone that you could bounce ideas with, and it kind of felt like the momentum you get out of leaving the school. And I agree with you, Lillian, when you were saying that, like, kind of like starting the job search a little bit before graduation and using that to kind of continue into and not really taking a break. I think that's like, I think that's super helpful. And I think the career services was kind of just another platform that the Flatiron program, like you can get from them, that can keep you on a momentum and keep you in a path when you're in a new space and you're not really sure what to do or what to grab at. And personally, I don't know, for those of you who are out there, and if anyone has Rachel, you know that she's really great. Like, yeah, she's just like, what I personally, the type of person I am, is that I love to bounce ideas off people, get a conversation going back and forth. And I really felt that she, and I would imagine most of them, are really into listening to who you are and what you need, and can kind of give the constructive feedback to the type of person you are. And I think that was super helpful just on a personal level.
I'd like to, just a second, I want to interject something. There are probably people who part of the group who are not currently job seekers and who may, if they're in the program, may not have yet been assigned a career coach, or if they're people who are prospective, who are checking out whether Flatiron's for them. One thing to know is, now I'm a coach, so I'm obviously a little prejudiced about this, but each person before they graduate is assigned an individual career coach who stays with them through the entire process. There are a number of steps, we call them milestones, to help people prepare their resumes, to their pitch, the way to present themselves, their LinkedIn, get a mock technical interview and a mock cultural interview, so that there's a nice preparation, hopefully, and a good relationship hopefully develops as well. I will say this, that if the relationship isn't a good one, we change it. But it's one-on-one coaching, it's a one-on-one relationship, it's a confidential relationship, and we think it can be pretty useful. Lillian, did you want to add to that?
Yeah, I was just going to talk about how, I mean, my experience with my career coach was just invaluable. Shout out to Matilda, she's awesome. But yeah, I think, again, as I had said earlier, I went into it just casting a wide net and shooting out all these resumes and kind of just relying on my resume. I thought that was the only way to do it. Like, I had never had an experience with a career coach where, I was taught, all of these neat tricks on LinkedIn, to up your, the search by recruiters, to like up your profile getting seen, et cetera, all these neat things. And also the tips to email people and message people and follow up on applications. And you're also given a cool job tracker that you can keep track of a lot of the emails you've sent, and oh, you haven't followed up, or that you haven't heard back from them, you need to follow up in 7 days, etc. It's a great way to organize everything, and that helped me a lot to keep track of where my application is at with that company. Like, oh, what should I do with this? How do I keep the momentum going? And so, yeah, I think it was just a very helpful experience overall.
William, would you like to add anything about your career services connection?
Yes, so my career coach is Sherry, and she is a wonderful person in terms of her job, and in terms of a friend, because job searching can be nerve-wracking. There's a few times that I just want to stop and don't do anything for a week, but because of her, I getting stronger, and I got over that. You know, hearing rejection every day for 4 months is, you know, it's not good for your emotion. Yeah. So at first she always emphasized that you have to networking, and I didn't listen to her. I was just like Lillian, you know, just play with a number, just send, you know, 100 of application. You know, what is the art? It turned out to be the art is 200 and 0.
Right. Well, it worked out for you though, didn't it?
Yeah, doesn't work for me. 4 of
Um,
my interview come from Flatiron, and the 6 other come from my networking.
right. That's one of,
There's
sorry.
yeah.
There's one thing I just like that you touched on, which since we're going to get into the Q&A pretty soon. So I want to talk about what it's like, particularly in the pandemic, but just one other thing to add, and then career service is not only coaching. William, you mentioned that you got a number of connections from the EP team. They're called its employee partnerships. It's part of the career services element that's offered at the school, where they won't necessarily get you a job, but they do make introductions and they do have relationships. Very dedicated team. The coaching team is large. EP team is not, and they work really hard. And as a coach, I can tell you that we really appreciate them. You guys were all searching during the pandemic. You touched on the fact that you went from a situation where you could do meetups or meet people in person to where you were confined to meeting people in 2 dimensions. What did you notice that was particularly concerning to you, and how did you deal with it in the way that the pandemic changed the job search?
I'll speak to
Go ahead,
something.
Mila.
So I noticed like when it was in person, it was really easy for me because I have a lot of friends who are developers in the Denver community. So then I would just like hang out with them, and then they knew this person, and then I got to meet all these people, and it was really cool. But then and it was like it was more of a personal connection, and it was really like I guess authentic. It was very like yeah, anyways. So it was kind of just like, oh, it happened. With the virtual meetups, I don't know. I personally was like way more anxious about it because I was like, oh my God, I'm gonna like stare at, there's like, we're just looking at each other's faces, and now it's like, it feels very like unauthentic, like very like forced. And so that, I don't know, maybe I just like got into my head. I didn't like the big meetups. For me personally, I didn't like that. And so I made more of an effort to like reach out to people individually at companies who had the position I eventually like want to get into, or worked for a company I really liked. And that personally for me like worked way better just for who I am as a person. Like I like connecting with people one-on-one better than like a big virtual room of people. But that's just me personally.
So you just agreed to a job, right? Just recently. It was
Yeah.
the other folks have all started, have you not, in your new positions? So what's it like to start a position that may have been intended to not be remote, but is remote? And how are you dealing with that?
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah,
Right.
I think it's been pretty hard. Yeah, I think starting remotely, I like the logistics of it are not as bad as I thought they would be. I think, you know, that with technology and Zoom and a lot of software that my company is using to kind of create shared documentation and whatnot has really helped. But I think the part of being so disconnected from the company itself and not being able to build a rapport with the team and not being in person in that way has affected me more than I thought it would. And to sort of also be starting off in a new career and a new job, you know, with not limited skills, but a very junior level skills, and to not sort of have those people around you that you can ask help, you know, with to do a task, and to not be able to tap someone on the shoulder, I think that's been pretty hard. You kind of have to wait for someone to respond to a message. And it's kind of this disconnection that I think has had a larger effect on me. Yeah.
Matt, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I was I can agree a lot with what Lillian said. There's this sense of like disconnect, but for me, I don't know. I part of me also reacted to it in a way that I was like surprised, because I never personally worked in the pharmaceutical company before, and the company I work for is a pharmaceutical company, and there's really there's not a lot of people that work in the technology department. It's essentially me, and I have like one other person that I can email and talk to about things. So there's like also a lot of things on my plate. But what I found is that, again, this kind of goes to a skill set that I think I realized we probably all have, and Flatiron really like ignited it in me, is the ability to like learn on the fly, learn what you need to learn in the moment to like take that next step. And I find that like one thing that I'm really valuing this time starting this job off. Like it's been about a month, about 2 months now, and I think I've learned more in this 2 months than I have like in the past 5 years in my other jobs, just because it's been constantly like you have to solve the problem. The problem's in front of you and the responsibility is yours. And if you can't do it, like, well, it's kind of not an option. So you find these new ways to reach solutions. And for me, it's actually been an amazing growth period. So I really enjoyed that. The other thing too is that I think it's kind of funny because my company happens to have an owner who's not the greatest at Zoom. So it's just kind of funny to talk to different people. Little antics that can happen with like calls getting disrupted in different ways. But other than that, I think it's been a really valuable experience.
Well, thank you. You know, I'm sure we have some questions in the chat. So if we should segue to that, let me know. Otherwise, we can keep going.
Hi, so I'm Michelle on the marketing team at Flatiron School. We do have some time for questions. I'll just jump right into them. The first question, with COVID-19, hiring has been a little slower with companies. How selective did you find yourselves in the job search and with your job offers? And then how did you know that the company that you finally landed at was the right company for you?
Anyone?
I can say something about that. I think that, yeah, once COVID hit, I was a little freaked out because I felt like there was this momentum, and then it was like, boom, like, whoa, no one's really responding to anything anymore. And that was one thing that like kind of caused me to get very selective. I actually ended up getting my job through reaching out to someone on a Medium post, then like kind of starting to talk with them and gaining a rapport. And a couple of those options happened where I was kind of finding the job through a specific person rather than finding the company first. And the way that I personally knew that the job was right was part of the job interview process is I talked to the president of the company, and we just had like a good like hour Zoom chat, and the type of the cultural interview is what sold it for me. It was really like learning that the company's goals, what they were, their history, and what they needed help in. And I felt like being really explicit in that and not holding back and kind of saying really what you can offer and really asking them to be forward in what they need. And I felt like that because I had a couple opportunities happening around the same time. And I specifically chose this due to like some key points that I felt were really in line with the type of person I am and the type of work that I wanted to do.
Oh, great, thank you. Anybody want to add to that?
I can add to that too. I kind of touched on it before, like I decided not to take a position with a different company, but I have like a few mentors that I like was talking to about it because I was like, you know, I don't want to not take this job and then not have a job for 6 months, but they basically were like, well, you need to like weigh like your situation, like what are your finance situation like could you hypothetically go like 6 months without another job, or like kind of just like taking all the variables that there are and having that factor into your decision. Luckily, like I live at home with my parents and my boyfriend has a full-time job. So it's like, I mean, if I didn't find a job, it would be okay. And I wasn't willing to sacrifice basically like a piece of me for this job because that's what it felt like a little bit. It was an HTML and CSS job. and I really wanted to work in React. And so that's kind of like what I kept my eyes towards, trying to find something. And I felt like this position with Overtone is perfect because it is like a React position. They work really heavily in React, and their cultural views or like their values like align a lot with mine, and like I want to contribute and be a part of a company like that. And so when I felt like all those things aligned, I felt like it was a good match. And they also, I want to like piggyback off of what Lillian was saying. This position was posted for a mid-senior as well, but I am like obsessed with the company. So I messaged them and said, hey, like I love your company. I know this position was for a senior, but if you like are considering a junior or even like apprentice, like I'm interested, and here's like my current project I'm working on, here's my portfolio, here's my cover letter, my application. Like I kind of bundled it into like a perfect little package and sent it to them. And I think they said like the first thing that caught their attention about me was my portfolio. And so I think that's also like really important as just a side note.
No, it's a very important point that you at times need to be aggressive with presenting a case for why you're a good fit, even if there's not 100%. There's not rarely 100% match with a job description. Do we have another question?
Yes. So tons of questions about networking events. What advice do you all have for someone who is just starting to network? So networking events can be very intimidating when they're in person, but now there's an added layer where everything is turned into virtual events. What are some tips that you can give to someone who's just starting their job search and starting to attend networking events?
Any takers?
I mean, I kind of harp on this. I've said a couple times throughout this, but while I do think the group things are definitely important. I really think that one of the things to focus on, and this is like having the confidence to network one-on-one. One of the ways that I think is really helpful, that especially with like LinkedIn or any of these platforms, that it can even be Twitter, it can be Instagram, depending on if people present themselves in a way where they seem like they're involved in technology. I often I ask for help a lot of the times. I would find someone who was working on a computer vision problem, or go to, I also search GitHubs all the time. I'm constantly reading people's code. And I found someone who had a really cool project, found their email, and just kind of asked them, hey, like I'm working on a similar project. How did you come to this conclusion? Would you ever like to have a phone call? And I kind of replaced this idea of getting a coffee with, would you have a phone call? And I found myself on the phone a lot with people. And I think like, just ask people. I think you'll be surprised how many people want to help and how many people are interested in, and also being valuable to other people. I think there's a lot of people who offered me so many resources simply because I asked them and was interested in what they were doing. And so I would say, like, if the big group thing is your thing, go for that, and maybe someone else has more to say about that. But if that's something that you don't find works for you, I'd say I really encourage reaching out one-on-one to people through various platforms with like asking for help and how, you know, what they can do to offer something in a resource-wise, because I think you'll be surprised at what you get in response.
Something you said that's very important, which was you asked specific questions. You know, when you just ask, oh, I'd really like to talk, or something more general, it's easier for somebody to not respond to that. But if you ask a specific question about a specific issue and or offer something positive yourself, you have a much better chance of people connecting with you.
Definitely, you'd be surprised how many more responses you get if you like, especially for anyone who's data science out there. If you're reading someone's code and you see a specific line of code that interests you, just talk about that, and you'll get like a whole few hours out of that conversation.
Wow.
So a portfolio question. What role did your portfolio play in landing a job? And what are some of the most important elements of your portfolio?
Is that question from a software engineer, data scientist, or a designer?
Oh, good question. I can't tell, but the question was asked again for software engineering.
Okay.
So let's talk about software engineering first.
Well, Mila, you just talked about sending all of the stuff, including your portfolio, did you not?
Yeah, I can speak to it. Sorry, I just feel like I'm talking so much, so give other people opportunities. But portfolio was huge for me. One of my biggest goals in the program, like obviously finishing the program was to also finish my portfolio or make one, so that I could be applying with it. Personally, I wanted to add as much of like my personality into it as I could, but it was also really important for me that it was really clean, really like easy to read. Like the information that's most crucial is easily, like you can find it easily. So that included like what my tech stack was, like what my position was, like I had like links to my blogs, and I also had like all of my cake projects. We had like one of the alumni come to our school and like give a talk, and she was talking about her portfolio and how like her current employers loved that she had added like all of her artwork. Just like showing a little bit more about like who she was as a person outside of just like development. And so I had all of like my cake projects, and that came up in like every interview. People were always commenting on it. And then I had a page like with all my projects, like just on its own. And so I think those things are really important to have. And personally, like I think me having a portfolio is what like got my foot in the door, and then also why they picked me. I think it made a big difference for me personally.
Great, thank you. Do we have another question?
Yeah, so how did you all deal with the uncertainty of landing a job when you were searching for jobs, especially when it came to location? So were you guys willing to relocate? Were you hoping to find a job where you currently reside? Like, how did you decide, like, okay, I'm just going to stay put and hope that I get a job by my home, or like, let me think about moving costs if I need to get a job somewhere else?
William, you want to handle that?
Yes. So to answer the question, at first I find jobs close to my house, in the Houston area, and then after a month, I stopped expanding my area, and then after 3 months, I just screw it, just apply everywhere, and whoever accept me first, I'll go with it. So I don't have a choice during the pandemic. It's so competitive, and because part of it is I'm still a single. I don't have kids, so I'm still young, so I just go and adventure and explore things. Yeah, I don't really mind going to different state to work. Yes, that's my story.
Thank you. We have another question?
Yeah, actually, we have the same portfolio question for data science. Can the data scientists talk about how you guys use your portfolios for job searches?
Yeah, I can start with mine. I found that, so I felt my anytime anyone asked for a portfolio, I would always send them a Medium post as well as my GitHub link. I felt like I wanted not to, because as William had said earlier, as a data scientist, you're often working with people who don't really know the technical inner workings of things and frankly don't care about it. They just want to know if you can explain what's going on in a digestible manner. So I often felt like my portfolio part one would be, here's the GitHub, yes, here's a README, here's the module that I built and how it functions with the project. But then often the GitHub, the Medium would be a little bit of like a story behind what's going on with it, and it would kind of express like the journey of either learning for, depending on what the Medium post is about, whether it's tutorial or more narrative. But I would send those, and I'd often get people asking me more questions that related to what they picked up from the Medium post. So while I think it's very important to have a clean GitHub and definitely like organize that and make that look good, I think your portfolio as a data scientist needs to include some type of expression of how you can communicate and how clear and concise you can be with talking about results from a project and the kind of significance or how those insights can relate to the problem or hypothesis that you started with.
Well, thank you. We're getting close to the hour. Is there another question that we'd like to get the folks to weigh in on?
No, I think we actually will wrap up here, if that's okay, just because we're getting close to the end of the hour here. I just want to say thank you to all of our panelists for giving such valuable advice, and thank you to those who joined us from the audience tonight. We hope that you leave with some valuable insight into how to land a job during a pandemic. If anyone is interested in learning more about our programs at Flatiron School, you can visit our website at flatironschool.com. We have tons of weekly virtual events that you can find on our website, as well as other events like this and workshops. And with that, I will end the event today. I'll say thank you again to our panelists, to our moderator, to Jeanette, and for everyone joining us. All right, thank you.
Babe.